I traveled deep into this forest to collect these fruits. Please, Your Highness, I meant no harm.
Do you honestly think I would hand them over to a filthy old beggar? Without
You
warning,
have
the
90
young
days.
princess struck the frail woman who had dared to ask for a single mango. But what the princess didn't know, what she would regret within moments, was that the old woman was no ordinary beggar. She was a spirit. Before the echo of the slap faded, the air shifted. In the blink of an eye, the princess's shimmering golden gown dissolved into torn, dusty rags. Her smooth, youthful face twisted painfully, aging decades in seconds, wrinkles carving deep lines where beauty once bloomed. The old woman straightened, her voice no longer weak but powerful and cold. "You have 90 days," the spirit declared. 90 days to change your heart. Fail, and you will not live to see another sunrise beyond that time. Now listen carefully, because this is how it all began. Princess Beauty was the treasured only daughter of King Solomon, the richest ruler across the 7 great kingdoms. His wealth was unmatched, but his love for his child surpassed even his gold. He loved her more than his crown, more than his power, more than his own breath. And that love, unchecked, ruined her, like fruit left too long beneath a burning sun. From the moment Beauty learned to walk, her feet never touched the earth. Servants lifted and carried her wherever she wished to go. When she learned to speak, the word no did not exist in her world. Every desire was fulfilled before it was fully spoken. New dresses were prepared daily, stitched from the finest fabrics. Rare perfumes arrived from distant lands across the sea. Nothing was denied, nothing was delayed. And slowly, without anyone noticing, kindness disappeared from her heart. She had the best teachers money could buy, beds softer than clouds, and meals sweeter than honey. Everything beautiful, everything comfortable, everything effortless belonged to her. But there is a hidden danger in always getting what you want. When no one ever denies you, you begin to forget that others feel pain too. You stop seeing people as human beings. You start believing you are chosen, superior, untouchable. And Princess Beauty, she believed she stood far above everyone else. If a servant brought her tea that was too warm or too cold, her hand would fly before a word was spoken. If a cook failed to meet her impossible standards, she hurled plates across the room without hesitation. She forced her maid to stand beneath the scorching sun for hours, holding up her mirror while she admired her own reflection, lost in herself. And heaven help anyone at all, who dared meet her eyes without permission. Such a person would be punished publicly, whipped as a warning to others. Fear ruled the palace. The entire kingdom trembled at her name. Even King Solomon, her father, found himself unable to discipline her. When advisors pleaded with him, he waved them off. "She is still young," he would say softly. "She will change with time." But time did not soften Beauty. By the age of 20, her cruelty had only deepened, hardening like stone. Among her attendants were 3 young women who stayed closest to her. Auntie Caro was the eldest at 25. Calm, observant, and wise beyond her years, she often watched Beauty with quiet concern, sensing that pride was leading the princess to a dangerous fate. Patient and steady, Rachel was the same age as Beauty, soft-spoken, thoughtful and gentle by nature. And Abigail, only 18, had a sweetness that survived despite everything she endured. The 3 of them had served the princess since childhood, and all 3 carried marks of her cruelty, some visible on their skin, others hidden deep within their hearts. Yet they remained. Where else could poor girls from forgotten villages go? The palace cruel as it was, still offered food, shelter, and survival. Inside, at least, they were still breathing. One blazing afternoon during the dry season, Princess Beauty awoke with a sudden desire. "I want mangoes," she declared, "fresh ones, picked from the forest, the sweetest fruit from the tallest trees." Auntie Carol lowered her head respectfully. "My princess, the market has ripe mangoes today I can bring." "Did I mention the market?" Beauty cut in sharply, her voice cold as stone. "I said forest mangoes, wild ones taste better." She rose from her bed. "Prepare my traveling clothes. We are going to the forest." The three maidens exchanged uneasy glances. Everyone knew the forest was sacred. Elders whispered that spirit walked beneath its trees, watching, listening. They warned travelers to enter with respect, with humility. But how do you teach humility to someone who has never known it? You don't. You simply pray that disaster does not follow. They should have prayed more. The forest welcomed her with thick green shadows, alive with sound, birds calling from unseen branches, leaves murmuring in the breeze, the distant rush of a river somewhere beyond sight. Beauty strode ahead, her golden gown catching fragments of sunlight as it filtered through the canopy. Her silk slippers barely touched the earth. Behind her, Auntie Carol, Rachel, and Abigail struggled under the weight of woven baskets. Sweat darkened their simple cloth dresses, their breaths heavy in the heat. Suddenly, Beauty stopped. "There," she said, pointing. Before them stood a towering mango tree, ancient and wide, its branches bending under the weight of ripe golden fruit. Heavy with ripe golden fruit. "Those," Beauty said sharply, pointing upward. "I want those ones, the biggest, the ripest. Climb and bring them down." Auntie Carol lifted her gaze to the towering tree. It stretched far into the sky, its highest branches swaying gently. The finest mangoes hung dangerously close to the top. "My princess," Auntie Carol said carefully, "perhaps the lower branches would be safer. These fruits are still sweet." "I said the top," Beauty snapped, stomping her foot on the earth. "Are you deaf or simply foolish?" Auntie Carol lowered her eyes. "As you wish, my princess." She began to climb. Rachel and Abigail steadied the trunk from below, their hearts pounding as Auntie Carol inched higher. The bark was slick, the branches narrow, but slowly, patiently, they gathered the mangoes Beauty demanded. Golden, plump, perfect. 3 baskets were soon filled. Beauty examined each mango as if passing judgment on criminals. "This one has a blemish. Throw it away. Too small. Unacceptable." Then a voice caught through the air. "Please, young sister, may I have just one mango?" Time seemed to stop. They turned towards the edge of the clearing. An old woman stood there, frail, thin as a shadow. Her clothes hung in tatters, stained with dust and age. Her face was deeply lined, like cracked earth after a long drought. Clouded eyes peered from under a worn headscarf, and her shaking hand rested on a wooden
she
walking
pleaded
stick.
again, her voice barely more than a whisper. "I am very hungry. I have not eaten for 2 days. Just one, please." Without hesitation, Auntie Carol reached into a basket. "Mama, take this," she said gently. "Stop!" Beauty's voice struck like thunder. She stepped forward, blocking the old woman, her eyes burning with anger. "Did I give you permission to touch my fruit?" she hissed, glaring at Auntie Carol, then turning slowly to the beggar. "Woman," her expression twisted in open disgust, "do not dare hand my mangoes to this creature," Beauty spat. Though her eyes were cloudy with age, the old woman fixed her gaze firmly on the princess. "Young sister," she said calmly, "I ask for very little. Just one mango. Hunger has followed me for days." "Hunger?" Beauty laughed, a sharp, merciless sound that cut through the forest. That is your misfortune, not mine. She gestured angrily toward the baskets. I traveled deep into this forest for these fruits. They belong to me. Do you truly believe I would give them away to a filthy beggar? Her eyes swept the old woman from head to toe. Look at you, wrapped in rags, covered in dust. You stink of the road. How dare you stand before me? How dare you lift your eyes toward royalty? Princess, please, Abigail whispered, gently touching Beauty's arm. It's only one mango. We have plenty. I said no, Beauty snapped, shaking her off. She stepped closer to the old woman, her face hard with fury. Leave! Disappear from my sight before I order you punished for insulting the crown. The old woman did not move. She simply stood there, silent, studying Beauty with those pale, unreadable eyes. So, you will not spare even one, she said calmly. Beauty sneered. Are you slow as well as filthy? I said no, not one, not even a bite. These fruits are mine. The old woman nodded slightly. Very well, she said softly. If that is your final answer, then it is accepted. Now go, Beauty shouted. And then, driven by arrogance and blind cruelty, Beauty made a choice that sealed her fate. She raised her hand and struck the old woman across the face. The crack of the slap tore through the forest like thunder. Birds burst from the treetops. Leaves shuddered. The wind died instantly. Silence swallowed everything. The old woman slowly lifted her hand to her cheek where Beauty's palm had landed. Struck her. Then the old woman smiled. It was not a smile of pain, not a smile of anger. It was something else entirely, something that sent a chill straight through Auntie Caro's veins. You should not have done that, child, the old woman said quietly, and she slowly straightened her back. The world itself seemed to respond. The air thickened, pressing down on them like an unseen weight. Shadows stretched unnaturally between the trees. Though the sun still hung in the sky, the forest dimmed, as if light itself was retreating. Cold swept through the clearing so suddenly that the girls could see their breath. Who are you? Beauty whispered, fear trembling in her voice for the first time in her life. I am one who deserved respect, the woman replied. Her voice was no longer weak. It was deep, layered, echoing as though it came from the earth, the trees, the wind itself. I walk these woods unseen, watching how hearts are revealed. I see how the powerful treat the helpless. I see who carries kindness and who carries only pride. She lifted a ground finger and pointed directly at Beauty. You were given everything: beauty, wealth, authority. And what did you do with these gifts? You chose cruelty. You chose mockery. You raised your hand against servants, against the poor. Her eyes burned. And now you have raised it against me. Beauty collapsed to her knees. I'm sorry, she cried, her voice breaking. I didn't know. I didn't mean... You knew, the spirit interrupted calmly, and you meant every act of cruelty. Silence followed, heavy and absolute. But now, the spirit said slowly, you will be taught. She stepped forward, her presence towering. You will learn humility. You will learn what it feels like to be powerless, to be ignored, to be unwanted, to be old, and to be ugly in the eyes of the world. The old woman lifted her walking stick, and you will live as the very thing you despise most. From this moment, your fine garments will turn to rags. Your flawless skin will surrender to time itself. Each day, you will age faster and faster until you become what you once called disgusting. No, please, Beauty cried, reaching out desperately. But the spirit stepped away. There is only one path to freedom from this fate. You must find me again, and when you do, you must ask for forgiveness not with empty words, but with a changed heart. Her voice hardened. You must become the person you are meant to be. If you truly change, the curse will be lifted. Her eyes suddenly burned with an unearthly glow. But if you fail, she continued, You will wither away before a single year has passed. She slammed her walking stick against the earth. A blinding flash tore through the clearing. Thunder roared, and in the next heartbeat, she was gone, disappeared like mist under the sun. Beauty gasped and looked down at herself. She screamed. Her golden gown, worth more than an entire village, had transformed into coarse brown cloth, torn, scratchy, lifeless, the same rags the old woman had worn moments before. Her silk slippers had vanished. Her feet were bare, dirty, real. But that was not the worst part. Her hands trembled as she lifted them before her eyes. The smooth, glowing skin had changed, slightly rougher, slightly duller. Thin lines traced her knuckles. No, no, no! She stumbled towards the river and fell to her knees, staring into the water. Her reflection stared back. She was still beautiful, but not as before. Fine lines had formed near her eyes. Her skin lacked its former shine. There was something unfamiliar in her face. Age. Only a little, for now, but she could feel it. Time was no longer moving normally. It was racing through her veins, inside her body. Make it stop. Please, make it stop. She collapsed on the forest floor, sobbing uncontrollably, her fingers digging into her own face as panic consumed her. I'm sorry. Please come back. But the forest gave no answer. The spirit was gone, and the curse had already begun. Auntie Carol, Rachel, and Abigail rushed to her side. Never in their lives had they seen Princess Beauty like this, shattered, trembling, stripped of power. We must return to the palace, Auntie Carol said softly. Your father will know what to do. The journey back was a waking nightmare. Every passerby stared. Some whispered, others laughed openly. Look at that beggar in rags. Where did she come from? No one recognized her. How could they? She already looked different, older, rougher, ordinary, poor. By the time they reached the palace gates, the guards stepped forward, crossing their spears. No beggars allowed here. Move along. Beauty screamed, desperation tearing from her throat. I am Princess Beauty. This is my home. Let me in. The guards exchanged amused glances. The princess, one scoffed. This filthy girl in rags?
We lock
They
you up.
laughed.
It's true, Abigail cried, stepping forward. This is Princess Beauty. She has been cursed. Please, look at her. One guard studied Beauty more closely. His expression changed. Doubt, then shock. By the gods, he whispered. It is her. The gates were opened at once. Inside the palace, whispers spread like wildfire. The beautiful princess had returned, looking like a beggar. King Solomon burst from the throne room. The moment he saw his daughter, his knees nearly gave way. Beauty, he gasped. What has happened to you? Through broken sobs, she told him everything. The forest, the old woman, the slap, the curse. The mangoes, the slap, the curse. King Solomon acted at once. He summoned every healer in the land, herbalists, spiritual elders, medicine men, wise women, and spellcasters. They surrounded Beauty day and night, burning herbs, chanting prayers, mixing potions, calling on ancient names. Nothing worked. The curse did not slow. By the end of the first day, Beauty looked 25. By the end of the first week, she looked 35. By the end of the month, she appeared 50 years old. Her once shining hair faded into dull gray. Her smooth skin creased like fruit left too long in the sun. Her posture bent, the brightness in her eyes dimmed, as if life itself was quietly retreating. In 4 weeks, time had stolen 4 decades. King Solomon wept openly. There must be something, anything we can do, he pleaded. But Beauty already knew the truth. There was only one cure. She had to find the old woman. She had to ask for forgiveness, and not with words alone, with her heart. And that was the hardest part. How does someone change when cruelty is all they have ever known? How does kindness feel real when it has never been practiced? The Spirit's words echoed in her mind. I will know if you are lying. Each night, Beauty stood before the mirror and stared at a stranger. The princess she once was no longer existed. In her place stood an aging woman, wrinkled skin, silver hair, weary eyes filled with regret. Everything she had once valued, beauty, youth, authority, had vanished. And the cruelest lesson of all was how the world now treated her. Servants who once bowed in fear walked past her without notice. Guards who once saluted now smirked behind her back. Whispers followed her through the halls. Even her father, who still loved her deeply, looked at her with sorrow and pity. For the first time in her life, Beauty was invisible, powerless, nothing. For the first time in her life, Beauty truly understood how it felt to live as the people she had once tormented, to be ignored, to be dismissed, to be treated as if you barely existed. And slowly, so slowly she almost didn't notice at first, something inside her began to fracture. The armor of pride she had worn for years started to crack. The cruelty she had hidden behind began to loosen its grip. But was it happening fast enough? Each day, her body grew weaker. Time was slipping through her fingers. 3 months passed. Beauty now looked nearly 70. Her joints ached constantly. Her hands trembled even when she tried to rest. Walking across the palace ground felt like climbing a mountain. She had perhaps 2 months left before the curse would claim her life. Yet something unexpected was unfolding, something the spirit may have intended from the beginning. Age, powerlessness, invisibility, they were reshaping her from the inside. One morning, she noticed Auntie Carol struggling to lift heavy buckets of water from the well. The old Beauty would have stood aside, criticizing every spilled drop. But this Beauty, frail, humbled, awakened, felt something unfamiliar. Empathy. Let me help, Beauty said softly, reaching for one of the buckets. Auntie Carol stared in disbelief. Beauty, you don't have to do that. I want to, Beauty replied. They lifted the buckets together. Beauty's weakened arms shook. Water splashed on her bare feet. Pain shot through her back. But she didn't stop. When they finally set the buckets down, Auntie Carol looked at her and smiled.
Not out of duty,
Not out of fear,
but with real warmth. Thank you, Auntie Carol said simply. And in that moment, Beauty understood something profound. That small smile, that quiet gratitude, it felt better than any crown she had ever worn. It was better than any praise she had ever received for her beauty. From that day, Beauty began helping with small tasks, folding laundry, sweeping floors, serving meals, things she had never even touched in her privileged life. At first, the other servants were cautious, watching her carefully, expecting the cruelty to return. But it never did. Beauty worked quietly beside them, asking questions, learning, showing patience, and most importantly, being humble. One afternoon, a young village girl arrived at the palace gate selling oranges. She was thin. Smut smudged her cheeks, and her clothes were worn. The guard stepped forward, ready to drive her away. "Wait," Beauty said. She walked toward the girl and crouched to meet her eyes. "What's your new?" she asked gently. "Grace, ma'am," the girl whispered, nervous. "Grace," Beauty said with a soft smile. "What a beautiful name. How much for your oranges?" 2 copper coins, Grace replied. Beauty had no gold left. Her father had given up trying to maintain her royal lifestyle. But Auntie Carol quietly pressed coins into her hand. Beauty paid the girl, then handed all the oranges to the palace servants. "For you," she said kindly. Then she pressed 3 more coins into Grace's hand. "For your family." Tears filled Grace's eyes. "Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much," Grace whispered, before running off, clutching the coins tightly. Rachel, who had been watching quietly, stepped closer to Beauty. "You're different now," she said softly. "I can see it. You're kind." Beauty smiled, but it was tinged with sadness. "I wish I had been kind before it took a curse to teach me, before I hurt so many people." She turned her gaze toward Rachel and noticed the scar on her arm, the one left when Beauty had thrown hot tea years ago. "I'm sorry, Rachel, for everything," she said, voice trembling. "I was a monster." Rachel's eyes widened. The princess had never spoken to her like this, never apologized, never admitted fault. I forgive you," Rachel said. And this time, Beauty meant it. It was different from before. She wasn't apologizing to break the curse. She wasn't putting on an act. She felt it, deep in her bones, in the very core of her being. Genuine remorse had replaced the cruelty she had once worn like armor. The hard shell was gone. The cruel princess was dead. A new person was being born in her place. But time was running out. She looked 90 years old now. Her body ached with every movement. She had maybe 2 weeks left. "I need to go back to the forest," Beauty said quietly to Auntie Carol. "You can barely walk." "I have to try. I have to apologize while I still can." And so they prepared for one last journey. Back to the forest, back to the mango tree, back to face the old woman, to either save her life or die trying. The trek was brutal. Every step was agony. Her fragile, ancient body protested at the slightest motion, but Auntie Carol, Rachel, and Abigail never left her side, lifting, supporting, practically carrying her as she stumbled through the undergrowth. Finally, they reached the clearing where the mango tree stood. Beauty collapsed against its trunk. "Leave me," she gasped. I need to do this alone. This is my burden, my mistake. I must face her myself." The 3 maidens hesitated, then reluctantly stepped back. Beauty crawled forward, settling at the base of the great tree, her back pressed to the rough bark. She struggled for breath, staring at her wrinkled, trembling hands, feeling the weak pulse of her heart, knowing that time was slipping away. "Please," she called, her voice trembling across the quiet forest. "If you can hear me, please come back.
Silence
I need
answered.
to speak with you."
Only the rustling of leaves and the distant calls of birds filled the clearing, and the wind whispered through the leaves. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness," Beauty whispered, her voice trembling. "I know what I did was unforgivable, but please, let me speak. Even if you never lift the curse, even if I die here today, let me tell you that I'm sorry." Silence stretched across the clearing. Only the rustle of leaves and the distant calls of birds answered her plea. Tears streamed down her wrinkled cheeks as she bowed her head. Perhaps it was too late. Perhaps the old woman was gone forever. Perhaps she would die here, under this tree, never having the chance to make amends. Then, a voice, soft, familiar. "You called for me, child?" Beauty's eyes snapped open. The old woman stood before her. Same tattered robes, same lined, weathered face, same clouded eyes that seemed to see everything. Beauty tried to arise, but her frail body would not obey.
I'm sorry, she whispered, barely audible. I'm so sorry. You said that before, the old man replied, when I first cursed you. But then you were not sorry. You were frightened, I know. You were only sorry that you were caught, only sorry for the consequences. No, Beauty said, lifting her gaze, tears streaking her face. Now I mean it. I understand, truly. She drew a shuddering breath. I understand what I did, not just to you, but to everyone. My whole life I was cruel. I hurt people because I could. I thought being royal made me special, made me better, but it didn't. It only made me a monster wearing a crown. The old woman tilted her head, studying her with those mysterious, piercing eyes. And what changed? She asked. Being powerless changed me, whispered Beauty. Being old, being invisible, feeling what they felt. All the people I hurt, I understand now. I'm so sorry, Beauty whispered, her voice steady despite the pain. Not because I want the curse lifted. I deserve it. I deserve to grow old, to suffer, to be alone. She swallowed hard. I'm sorry because you were right. I was cruel. I was empty inside. And even if I die today, I need you to know this. I changed. I became who I should have been all along. Tears slipped from her eyes. And I'm grateful. Grateful for that you cared enough to teach me, even if the lesson was meant to kill me. The forest held its breath. For a long, aching moment, the old woman said nothing. Then she smiled. Not the unsettling smile from before, not the smile of judgment. This one was warm, gentle, human. You have learned well, child, she said softly. She placed her gnarled hand upon Beauty. Warmth flooded through Beauty's body, deep, powerful, overwhelming. The pain vanished, her shaking stopped, wrinkles softened and faded, grey hair darkened like soil touched by rain. Her bent back straightened as the weight of years lifted away. Time itself seemed to retreat. The years fell from her like dry leaves blown by the wind. When Beauty arose, she was young again, not just in body, but in spirit. She walked to the river and looked at her reflection. Her face was beautiful once more, but not the cold, flawless beauty she once worshipped. This beauty was softer, warmer. Her eyes held depth now, understanding. She looked like someone who had suffered and survived, someone who had learned. Thank you, Beauty whispered. Thank you for the lesson and for the second chance.
Use it
The
wisely,
old woman nodded
she
slowly.
said. Remember what you learned. Remember how it felt to be powerless. And never, never become that cruel girl again. I won't, Beauty said firmly. I promise. The old woman began to fade, her form thinning like mist at sunrise. One more thing, child, she said, as her voice echoed softly through the clearing. Those mangoes you refused to share, the old woman said, her voice soft but firm. I never needed them. I was testing you, testing your heart. And at first, you failed spectacularly. She smiled, faint but kind. But you passed the harder test, the test of change, the test of humility. Not everyone is given a second chance. Make yours count. Then she was gone, completely, vanished, leaving only the quiet rustle of leaves behind. Beauty stood in the clearing, young, alive, and forever changed, grateful, humbled,
transformed not just in body, but in spirit. When she returned to the palace, King Solomon ran to her side, tears streaming down his face. "My daughter, you're back. You're beautiful again." "No, Papa," Beauty said gently. "I'm not beautiful again. I'm beautiful for the first time." She placed a hand over her heart. "Before, I was only pretty on the outside. Now I am trying to be beautiful here too," she said, pointing to her chest. Beauty gathered all the palace servants, the ones she had ever hurt, and apologized to each of them personally. She asked for forgiveness. Some forgave immediately, some took time, but she waited patiently, learning that forgiveness was a gift, not a right. She turned her newfound humility into action. She built schools, she started programs to help the poor, she opened the palace kitchens to feed hungry children. Every day, she worked to be better, to remember the lesson the old woman had taught her, and to live it. Years passed. When King Solomon eventually died, Beauty ruled with wisdom, compassion, and kindness. She became known not for her beauty, but for her heart, for her humility, for the way she treated everyone equally, whether the richest merchant or the poorest beggar. And sometimes, on quiet mornings, she would walk into the forest with baskets of mangoes, leaving them at the base of that great tree for anyone who needed them.